Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Today is a video on another global war, 1936 to 1945 expansion set, and this is one of my favorite ones. It's just a brilliant expansion set. It's called American Minorities at War. And I bought this one a long time ago, so I'm quite familiar with this one, although I haven't tried it with the global war game yet. Like I bought this, there's very few of the expansion sets that transfer really well to the global 40 game in Axis and Allies, but this one did, although I did have to change a lot of the things in it though. Like here, I'll show you. I will give you a link to a video that I made for the American Minorities at War for Axis and Allies, and in that video you will find out how to get one of these. This it took me a while, but I made this chart up. So I took pictures of all the roundels so that you could see which one you needed to match up. And I summarized everything on there, just like you'll see. They will be summarized in the chart that you get for the global war game. But some of them I had to change. Like you look at that U.S. women at work there. It says 2Us. Place marker on any zone in the U.S. All aircraft built on an industrial complex in the continental U.S. cost 1 IPC less for the rest of the game. Now, I had to do that because, like some of them, like I said earlier with the other expansion says, didn't transfer very well. For instance, that one there, it said that you could build one extra unit at any complex in the United States. Now, that would be handy in this 1936 game, but in the Axis and Allies game, I mean, you could build 30 units there anyway, right? If you're building more than 30 units in the continental US in that game, then I don't know, there's just no way, let's put it that way. So I had to change things like that. And there's another one in here, like you'll see later, it talks about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is on this map, but it's not on the Axis and Allies map. But anyway, if you want to play this for Axis and Allies, you can go, I'll give you the link to that other video in the description box below this video, and you can find out where to download this and get it printed yourself. So let me just put that away. Okay, so let's get into this now. First of all, let's take a look at it all. Now you see all these units here? You don't get those. Those are my units. What you get is these tokens here, and they're the nice wood board tokens. Here, you take a look at that. They're nice and thick and everything. They're like the expensive roundels that you can get from them, like the really nice roundels. But anyway, they're with all the different symbols of the American minority regiments and units and everything. So there's 17 of them, and you get all 17 of them, and I'll just pan around there and you can look. And I put the units in behind because when I talk about them, then we can talk about what they do. But yeah, there's 17 of them there. So let's get into this. In the 1930s and 40s, the American military establishment and the country at large was racially segregated. There was a great resistance to integrating or even using minorities in combat roles. The men and women of the units in this set were pioneers. You will notice as you read about these units that many of them were not only the first of their kind, but excelled in their performance and valor, and did so despite the intense discrimination they faced. These men and women fought 2 wars, one abroad and one at home. It is to the courage and sacrifice of these men and women that we dedicate this set. It is with regret I cannot detail all of the deeds nor sacrifices and tribulations of these heroes. Much has been written about them, and I encourage you to read it. But I feel there is a deeper aspect to learning about American minorities by playing a game where the units themselves come to life as actors on the board, where you may depend on them and also be able to use them to the bias of the time. Many minority groups were represented in this set, including Chinese Americans, Mexican Americans, Filipinos, Japanese Americans, Nisei, Native Americans, Mexican, and women. The largest group, African Americans, accounted for 11.3% of the men in U.S. uniform at the war's end. So anyway, that's why I like this one so much. Like this set was so well researched. to find all of these units and to find the statistics and everything on these units. Like this is a, it takes a lot to download all the rules for this one. How many pages does it go here? It's longer than most of them, like it's 14 pages long, right? Just because they tell you all about all the units. What I really like about it as well, not just that it's well researched and that it's very historical, but because it makes the game really interesting. It's not just where you get a set of something and everybody does +1 or attack or defense, like some of these do, but some of them do something different. You know what I mean? Like each one of these has its own characteristics, and also they're not just a bunch of infantry or not just a bunch of planes. Like you can see there with all the units on the board there, they are all different kinds of units. Like even anti-aircraft guns and and armor and artillery and boats and planes and everything, right? So anyway, how you do this? Like what I did, I went out and bought a bag. I walked around the mall for the longest time. This is probably about a year or more ago, and I got this bag here. And what you do is you just, like, you're supposed to put everything in a cup, right? But I just put them in this bag. And so you've got all 17 of the tokens in the bag or in a cup or whatever you're going to use. And then when it's your turn, you draw one of them out because you don't know what you're going to get. What happens is when the Americans go to war, they have the option of paying 15 IPP to implement this scheme, and it becomes effective immediately. So their turn comes around, let's say it's July 1942 or something, and they're at war with Japan, then they pay $15, and then right then and there they draw a token, and let's say they draw this one here, okay, and then what they do is they roll the dice, because like you have to see if here, let me just read what it says here. On a 1 to 6, the player can draw a marker. On a 7 to 12, he or she is prevented from drawing the marker due to the inherent biases at the time. There are some movies made, like this marker here, the Tuskegee Airmen. It'd be a good snapshot of what they're doing in this if you watch that movie. It was a really, really good World War II movie, and it was about a black fighter squadron. And they trained and trained and trained and trained and trained, but they wouldn't let them go over to the war until the First Lady came along and said, how come these guys aren't fighting? And then once they did get over there, well, then they wouldn't let them do anything. Like they were in, I think they started in North Africa, and they just sat there. They wouldn't let them go and fight the enemy. And then when they finally did, they saw, holy crap, these guys are good. So anyway, there was an inherent bias, but even though they made it into the war. So you got to roll the dice, and on a 1 to 6, you get to, so here, see, I got a 2 there. So you draw a marker out of the bag, and you get to use that marker. And if you had a 7 to 12, like you rolled, and let's say you got a 12. Rather than me sit here rolling the dice for a while. So let's say you got a 12, well, now you don't draw a marker. And you only get to roll once per turn. So at the start of your turn, before you do anything, roll the dice. Because you don't know what you want to buy, right? Some of these units come with the marker, and some of them you put the marker under a unit that you already own. So definitely you're going to want to roll first to see if there's something that you can use it for that turn, right? And then make your purchases accordingly. So let's get into seeing what these things are. Let me just put my dice aside there. Okay, so the first one is the Red Ball Express. Now they were a convoy system that kept supplies moving inland following the Normandy invasion in June 1944. These truck convoys were marked with a red ball symbol, which gave them priority over other traffic and expedited their movement through checkpoints. A majority of the drivers in the Red Ball Express were African American. Drivers moved vital supplies, often at night, without lights through enemy territory. Their effort helped secure the Allied position after the D-Day invasion, which signaled the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. So these guys, what they, like, you see supplies moving from the front and wounded moving to the back. These guys with the red, they just slapped a red ball with some red paint on the side of the truck, saying these guys got priority, let them through the lines first. So if you were on the road, you had to get off the road and let these things go through, because what they were carrying was a priority. They needed that at the front. Could be munitions or fuel or whatever. Like that truck needed to get through today, you know what I mean? And so that's what these guys are. They're the Red Ball Express. So when you're going to use that marker, you set it aside and you just hang on to it until you're ready to use it, because you might not be ready that turn, but that doesn't mean you lose it, right? You just set it aside. And after a successful amphibious invasion of a European country, that's when you would use it. So what it does is it allows up to 2 additional units to non-combat move into the country the turn it was captured. Those units may move from the adjacent territories or arrive on 1 or more transports, even if no naval base is present. After use, remove it from the game. So basically what it means is you can drop your units off with a transport and move them 1 space inland. And that would be pretty handy, right? Like, let's take it over here. Like you've transported, you already own Normandy here, and let's say you're attacking Paris, but you know, when you get it, you know you're not going to have too many things there, but you bring in another transport after that, and you use your red ball marker, and you drop your guys on Normandy with the Red Ball Express, and you move them to Paris, because you can non-combat move them there. And so that will, you know, and you can do that with 2 units, so that will help bolster Paris. And that's just an example. Like, you could use it anywhere in the continent of Europe there to do that. So that is the first one. That's Red Ball Express. And that one's fairly unique compared to the rest of them. So the next one is the 61st Infantry Borinqueniers. And they were the Puerto Rican regiment. So they've been active from 1920 to present, serving in World War I, World War II, Korean War, and the War on Terror. During World War II, the 65th was deployed to protect the Panama Canal and guard U.S. airfields in Corsica. The 65th also saw action in France against German Panzer Grenadiers in December of 1944. So when you draw that marker, and that would be this one here, this blue one here, then you place a free infantry in Puerto Rico with the 65th marker underneath it. So that's one where you get a free unit. The last one there, you didn't get a free unit. I just put those units there to show you what you would be using with them. And here's Puerto Rico right here. So if you draw that marker, you go, yay! You put that guy on Puerto Rico, and he doesn't do you much good out there, but you know, like, you can go pick him up with a transport and take him wherever you want, right? So that's the second one. Okay, what's the third one here? Navajo Code Talkers. This is one of my favorite ones, and if you ever seen that movie Wind Talkers with Nicolas Cage, that's who the movie was about, was the Navajo Code Talkers. I have a friend down in Tucson, and she got to meet one of them. There's only a few of them left alive. He might even be the last one, I'm not sure. But anyway, she said it was just amazing listening to this guy's stories and everything. Like, there was a bunch of people, they went and they and he told stories and stuff, and then afterwards they got to go and meet him and stuff. So the U.S. Marines used Native Americans to send coded messages. About 400 to 500 of them served as code talkers with the U.S. Marines. Choctaw and Cherokee Native Americans pioneered this strategy during World War I. In World War II, Navajo, Lakota, Meskwaka, Comanche, and Spanish Basques were used as code talkers. So they could just talk in their own language. They didn't have to use a code, because nobody would know what they were talking about. So, because I mean, you could hear the radio, right? Like, communications weren't they weren't private, that you could intercept people's radio messages. But if you had 2 Navajos talking to each other, then the Japanese would have no idea what they were talking about. The only thing was that you couldn't let one of those guys get captured, and that's what that movie Wind Talkers was about. They were assigned a Marine, and if they were about to get captured, then it was their job to shoot the Navajo so that he couldn't be tortured to giving up their language, right? Anyway, so when you draw that marker, if you draw that marker, then you set it aside again until you're ready to use it. And then the U.S. may choose to use this marker once per game. Once you use it, You can move up to 3 ships or submarines, 1 extra movement. All units moved in this way can start in different zones but must end their movement in the same sea zone. So I just put a few ships in here, but you can use any type of ship you want, and you can move up to 3 of them, and you get to go an extra, it says an extra move, 1 extra movement, but I think what they mean is 1 extra space. But it says movement. I'm pretty sure though that means 1 extra space. So like these 3 ships here, they all go 3 spaces. You could go 4 spaces with those ones on a turn, and you know, like if the other guy doesn't know that you're going to draw that marker, then great. Like you can be in Hawaii, and next thing you know, let's see, you go 1, 2, 3. You could attack Japan from Hawaii if you have that marker. Probably even, let's see here. Actually, you've got the naval base, so you could actually go 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there you go. If they forgot to put stuff on Tokyo, then you could have 3 transports go 1 space less. I forgot about that. They only go 2 spaces normally. But yeah, you could go all the way from San Francisco to Japan with boats that go 3 spaces to begin with, but not transport, sadly. Oh well. But if you had the transports in Hawaii and the boats back in San Francisco, you could. Anyway, so the next one, oh, and that's this marker right here, the red one. So the next marker here, that is the 442nd Japanese American Infantry Regimental Combat Team. So the legacy of treatment of Japanese Americans during World War II was one of suspicion, internment, and mistreatment. And that was the same in Canada too. We interned Japanese on the West Coast. And there's, you know, like the ones that were children at the time, a lot of them have books out now and everything, and from their days of being interned as children in camps in British Columbia, the province that I live in. There was just a lot of suspicion. Funny, they didn't round up all the German citizens though. I wonder why. Despite this, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team fought with distinction and became the most decorated unit of its size in American history. Of the 14,000 men who served in the team, 9,486 of them earned Purple Hearts, and 21 were awarded the Medal of Honor. So these guys were really good fighters. So to use this, you place the marker underneath any infantry unit in the continental United States, and so that unit may not retreat. It gains a +1 attack and defense, and when destroyed, you may rebuild it in the United States. You are restricted though. Due to an inherent and unfounded concern of loyalty at the time, this unit may not be deployed in the Pacific Theater. So this guy right here, you don't get a free infantry. You place it under an infantry that you have somewhere in the United States, and that guy can fight in Europe. He's not allowed to retreat, and he's +1 attack and defense. And if he dies, then you take the marker back and you put another dude on him in the continental United States. So the next one, U.S. Women at Work, and I mentioned that one earlier, and that's obviously this one, the one with the woman on the marker. So while American men were serving in the military, millions of women filled their roles in the workforce, performing jobs that had until then been considered too difficult for women. Women worked in factories and on farms, drove trucks, ferried aircraft, and performed other tasks vital to the U.S. economy. By 1942, there were an estimated 2.8 million women contributing to the war effort. So to use that marker, you draw it out, and then just set it down somewhere in the United States so you remember that you have it, and then all your factories are increased by 1. So like a major factory here, instead of producing 5, you can produce 6 units, and a minor factory, instead of producing 1, you can produce 2 units. But that's not anywhere though. Like you can't put a factory on the Philippines and use it or anything. It's only in the American home country. And then the next one is the Tuskegee Airmen. That's this one here, and he's got a fighter in behind him. Like I said, great movie. If you haven't seen it, then absolutely go check it out. So the Tuskegee Airmen were African American military pilots of the 332nd Fighter Groups. Pilots were trained at the Tuskegee University in Alabama. The pilots from this group were the first African American airmen. The 332nd comprised 4 squadrons and served in Italy, flying bomber escort missions. The 332nd held an excellent escort record for protecting U.S. bomber crews and earned many commendations. The term Tuskegee Airmen also refers to the 477th Bombardment Group, as well as numerous African Americans Air Force support personnel. So to use that marker, you place it under a fighter in the United States. So you don't get a free fighter, you have to have a fighter. You just place the marker under it, and that fighter will gain +1 to interception value and +1 to all air superiority rolls on the first round of combat where they are opposing other aircraft. So if you know the rules of the game, when you fight, you go into combat, you put all your units in there. The fighters get an air superiority roll, so they get to try to knock another plane out of the sky, any type of plane, and that's just in the first round. And then after that, then they just fight the regular combat. They can shoot at anybody after that. And also the gains +1 interception value, which is good. Like that's if you're doing a bomber escort, if you're being an escort, or if you're going up to stop bombers and escorts from coming into your country and bombing your factories, then you can send them up and you'll get +1 interception. Normally it's 3, but it'll make you 4, a roll of 4 or less. So the next one is the anti-aircraft battalion here. It was the 452nd Anti-Aircraft Artillery Battalion. So they were an all African American anti-aircraft artillery battalion that served with distinction in the Second World War. They shot down 87 aircraft, 68 fully confirmed and 19 partials. This was the highest kill rate of any African American unit and the 3rd highest among all American anti-aircraft units in World War II. So to use that marker, you place that underneath the anti-aircraft gun. That AA gun gets an additional 4th shot at 3 during each battle. So normally an anti-aircraft gets 3 shots against incoming planes, up to 3 shots. Like if there were 3 planes, if there was only 2 planes, then you only get 2 shots. But if there were 4 planes there, you would still only get 3 shots normally. But with this sucker here, if there's 4 planes, then you get 4 shots. If there's 5 planes, you get 4 shots. You know, that's how it goes. Okay, so the next one there, where are we here? That's this dude here. That is the 158th Regimental Combat Team. They were also called the Bushmasters. So they were from the Arizona National Guard, and they were primarily Mexican American and Native American soldiers. In World War II, the 158th was deployed to the Pacific, where it fought against the Japanese in the Philippines to open passages for Allied shipping through the narrow passages of the Visayan Islands. So to use that marker, when this unit is drawn, place it beneath any regular unit already in the southwest United States. If none are present, keep the marker until one is in that zone. Once an infantry is in that, then you can place the marker there. Then it gets a +1 attack and defense. So that's, what did it say? The southwest. So that's this area here. So once you have an infantry there, then you can put the marker underneath that infantry, and he's +1 attack and defense. That helps. It kind of turns them into an elite infantry, really is what it does when you look at the stats for regular infantry and elite infantry. Okay, the next one is the field artillery. So they were the 522nd Field Artillery Battalion. They were part of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. So they were composed mainly of men of Japanese ancestry living in Hawaii at the start of World War II. Many of the men in this unit had science and engineering backgrounds, which made them ideal for making calculations and corrections needed to provide accurate artillery support. As a result, they became known as the fastest artillery unit in Europe, achieving a fire rate of 3 rounds per minute on their guns. The unit fought in Italy, France, and Germany, achieving the distinction of being the only Japanese unit to fight against both the Japanese and the Germans. So to use that marker, you place it beneath an artillery unit in the United States, not coastal artillery though, just like your regular artillery. That unit re-rolls a missed attack one time during each combat it is involved in, whether it is the attacker or defender. So that would be handy. Okay, then the next one there with the tank gun is the 761st Tank Battalion. They were an independent tank battalion composed primarily of African American soldiers. The 761st Black Panthers were formed in March of 1942, just months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The unit trained for almost 2 years before it saw combat. During this time, they endured harassment from white soldiers. The unit deployed in March of 1944 to France, where it was rated as superior, and fought in the Rhineland, the Battle of the Bulge, and helped U.S. forces breach the Siegfried Line. Out of the 675 men, 256 Purple Hearts and 1 Medal of Honor were awarded, a testament to their sacrifice. So to use that, you put that marker beneath a medium or light armor in the United States, and that gains a +1 attack value. I'm just going to pause this for a second. So that was the marker here with the Black Panther on it, and that was their nickname, the Black Panthers. And it's not +1 attack and defense, it's just +1 attack. So the next one is the one with the buffalo on it. So that's the 92nd Infantry Division. They were segregated African American infantry unit that was formed in 1917. They were called the Buffalo Soldiers, and it was the only African American unit to see frontline combat in Europe. The division served in the Italian campaign and suffered 3,200 casualties, a quarter of their force. The 92nd captured 20,000 German prisoners, and its members earned over 12,000 decorations and citations, including 2 Medals of Honor. So to use that marker, you place it and an infantry in the Southwest United States. This is a free unit to the U.S. player. So that's where I showed you before, right beside San Francisco. So you put that marker and a free unit under that marker in the Southwest United States. And the next one is the Chinese American Composite Wing. Now this is not to be confused with the Flying Tigers. This is a different unit. These were minorities. I don't think there were minorities that flew the Flying Tigers. So the Chinese American Composite Wing was a joint U.S.-Chinese air wing active in China from 1943 to 1945. The unit operated bomber and fighter squadrons inside China to resist Japanese occupation. They were credited with destroying over 490 Japanese aircraft and vehicles, as well as damaging Japanese merchant shipping, rails, and harbor facilities without suffering a single loss. So they shot the shit out of the Japanese, and they didn't even lose one single plane. That's amazing. So to use that, when drawn, the U.S. may lend-lease 1 fighter and 1 medium bomber to the KMT. These units may reach China through the normal lend-lease control, or through the normal lend-lease method, or the U.S. player may fly his own fighter or bomber to China. The unit is under command of the KMT player. Once destroyed, these units cannot be replaced. So you would fly the American medium bomber and the fighter. If you want both of them, like you can fly both of them over to China there, and the KMT player will get to use them, and once they die, you don't fly another one over. They were hard to kill though, so in addition to that, all the anti-aircraft fire and interception suffers a -1 die roll to destroy them. So that's any anti-aircraft that they might go up against, or interception. So if they were doing a bombing mission, or the Japanese were bombing them and they were going up to intercept. Alrighty, so the next one is down here, and that's this red one here. That was the 12th Infantry Philippine Division. So the Philippine Division, aka the 12th Infantry, was composed of 10,470 3 Filipino troops. They were also known as the Philippine Scouts. This unit participated in the defense of the Philippine Islands, during which many members were captured and held prisoner in prisoner of war camps. So to use that, you place a free infantry unit in the Philippines with the marker underneath it, and they just function as regular infantry. So this is the Philippines over here. You get to place the marker there, and you get to place the dude there. Now I'm not sure what would happen if there was Japanese units on the Philippines, if you still get to place it. It doesn't say. I would say it does. Like you drew the marker, you get to put them there, and they're from the Philippines. So you must be able to just place them there, and then the Japanese would have to take them out. So that would help you out for sure. Okay, so the next one. Okay, no wonder they got captured so many times. They can't stand up here. Okay, the next one there. That is the 201st Fighter Squadron. So Mexico declared war on the Axis on May 22nd, 1942. The 201st Fighter Squadron was a part of the Mexican Expeditionary Force that fought with the Allies during World War II. The Aztec Eagles flew P-47D Thunderbolts and fought against the Japanese in the Philippines and Formosa. The 201st destroyed enough buildings and equipment to put 30,000 Japanese troops out of action. So they were pretty dynamite. So to use that marker, set it aside until the U.S. aligns Mexico. During the U.S. place units phase, place the marker beneath any tactical bomber in the United States. This unit can do 1 or 2 strategic damages flying strategic bombing missions as if it were a medium bomber. So you can use this tactical bomber as a medium bomber as well if you'd like. That's what they're saying here. And also, like if you have the elite fighter squadrons, they come with the P-47D, so you can use that. You can use that plane if you want instead of using the tactical bomber here. Okay, the next one is the Nisei. I'm not exactly sure what Nisei, or maybe it tells us here. So the 100th Infantry Battalion, they were comprised mainly of second generation Japanese immigrants. So that's who they were. Mostly drawn from the Hawaiian National Guard. Despite mistrust from the military establishment, the 100th deployed to Italy, where they fought against German forces in Italy. The 100th took part in the battles of Monte Cassino and Anzio, suffering heavy casualties. The 100th was eventually combined with the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. 21 members of the 100th Infantry received the Medal of Honor for valor in combat during World War II. So to use that, place the marker beneath any regular infantry unit that is currently in Hawaii or San Francisco. This unit may not retreat. It gains +1 attack and defense. When destroyed, you may rebuild it in the United States. Due to inherent concern of loyalty at the time, this unit may not be deployed to the Pacific Theater. So that is just like that other one there. I think that was this one up here, right? And they look the same too. In fact, no, I think I got them right. Yeah. They almost look the same, and you use them the same. One of them was Japanese Americans, and the other one were Hawaiians. So the next one is an airborne unit. They were the 555th Parachute Infantry Company. So they were formed in 1943 as an all-African American unit with African American officers. They did not see combat during the war, but participated in firefighting missions on the U.S. West Coast in response to Japanese incendiary balloon bomb attacks. After the war, they became part of the 82nd Airborne, making it the first integrated unit in the United States. So when drawn, place that marker beneath any airborne infantry unit in the United States. Once per combat, this unit may re-roll any missed attack. There you go. So yeah, that's an airborne that gets to re-roll an attack. And the last one, that is the USS Mason Destroyer Escort. So the USS Mason was an Evarts class destroyer escort and was one of only 2 ships in the U.S. Navy that was comprised largely of African American crewmen. The USS Mason provided convoy escorts in the Atlantic and Mediterranean. So when you draw that marker, you place it beneath a destroyer or torpedo boat destroyer adjacent to the United States coast. That unit may re-roll a missed defense roll against a raiding submarine if it is on escort duty. So to use this marker here, you put it underneath one of these. Now that guy has to be on escort duty if you're going to use him. So he would do really good up in the United States there, the eastern United States, on a convoy line, because he gets to re-roll a miss. So that'd be great. But like I said, he's got to be on escort duty. So then the only thing left here is they give you this chart, so that you don't have to go and read all the way through and everything. So this chart here just tells you like a quick summary of what you need to do. The one thing I don't like about the chart though is not like mine. Like it's really hard to read what the markers are because the writing is so small on them. Maybe your eyes are better than mine, but I have trouble reading what it is, and I don't have them memorized, right? Except for a couple of them, like the Women at Work one is obvious, and the Red Ball Express one's obvious, and the Buffalo Soldier one, like things like that. I know what the Tuskegee Airman marker is, but it would have been cool if they would have put a picture of the marker beside it. But anyway, it's a summary of all that you need that everything does there. And on the other side of the page, they give you one for Axis and Allies. But like I said at the beginning of this video, these things didn't make as much sense to me. Like they just, it was like the person who did this hadn't played Axis and Allies before. So, like like this one here, increase output of major factories to 6 and 4. The major factories are 10 already, and the miners were 3. So they had the miners right at 4, but the majors, that doesn't make much sense. If you're going to use it for Axis and Allies, I would encourage you to go and download and it's a free download, and it's on my American Minorities at War for Axis and Allies video, which I will link to. So that is about all I have for you today. Remember, you don't get the units there, you just get the markers, and I highly recommend this set. It's an awesome set. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.